that intro! Hello, darlings, and welcome back to my channel. Finally! Getting my mic back has been an odyssey that Homer would have been proud of, but it is here and it is time to get back to the wild, weird, wonderful world of video making. Also cats. Sienna says thanks for hanging in there during the long wait. Anyway, here is Summer Me and Summer Jackie talking about our operatic first times. And get your mind out of the gutter, you know what I mean. Hello darlings, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hahn.
My name is Jacqueline Ko.
And we are professional opera singers. And I live here now, temporarily, for a bit, for our birthdays. Because we had this dream plan for like years that for our 30th birthdays we would go to Hawaii, but this is Hawaii now. So instead of Hawaii content, you get Borb content. Today we're playing Opera First Times. So let's snuggle up, get some tea, and dish. Before we start, if you were looking for a joyful little corner of the internet where we could talk opera, disability, queerness, cats, and tea, you have found it. And if you weren't looking for it, you have found it anyway. So go hit that subscribe button and ring the little bell so you never miss a video. I have said that a lot.
Yeah, I can tell.
What was the first opera you were ever in?
I have a somewhat unique history, I feel like. So, like, my first opera that I was in was a production of Hansel and Gretel. I was 16 years old. We were both in that production.
Yes, we were.
At 16. And I was a last-minute replacement, and that set the precedent for the rest of my career, essentially.
Jackie is the person you call when you are like 1 week from shows.
Or occasionally less than 1 week, although I don't like that. Thankfully, I was Sandman, so it's little 3-page arietta, not ridiculous to learn on a short time frame. And I did have 2 weeks. I got the call the night before we opened. I think it was something like 11 p.m. for the matinee where we opened, saying you're on tomorrow afternoon.
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
We were doing that show in 2 different venues.
Yeah.
And because I had 2 weeks, I did get to rehearse. I did get to walk it even in a full rehearsal, but only in one of the venues. And the one I ended up singing in was not the one where I got to walk it. In the half hour before the show, I was just looking around and trying to place myself relative to things. And it wasn't until I actually got onto the stage right before my piece that I realized that, hey, for some of this, I'm gonna be facing my back to the conductor.
Oh, right, yeah. In that venue, the performance area that was kind of being used like a stage was really sort of wide and shallow, and the conductor and the entire orchestra was essentially like shoved in a closet.
Off to one side.
Yeah, so if you needed to see the conductor, you had to be like looking in this direction, which, you know, not the best, not my fave.
I just remember going, okay, well, I have this time to try to get my cue, and then I can look at the other characters. It all went fine. It went really well, but because I also didn't know when or if I'd be on at all, basically no one I knew was there because I hadn't been able to tell them, come see me. And I remember that my exit was right where the entrance to the building was, and I walked right off stage and ran into one of our friends who had just arrived. I was like, you missed me.
I have mentioned my first ever opera before in a video that I will put up here. That's when I sang one of the apparitions in Macbeth at Vancouver Opera. I popped out of a cauldron and went, "No man of woman born shall harm you," and left. I also fell on my butt on opening night. Everybody looked at me, and I therefore upstaged Greer Grimsley and Jane Eaglin in my operatic debut really terribly. And that's something I have to live with. I have to die knowing that that's a thing that I did. It was great. Although I did have to get painted entirely green and then wipe it off in a quick change. But yeah, that was my first opera. Neither of us started with, like, Mozart.
I mean, Hansel and Gretel is a children's opera, so...
Humperdinck's hard music, though.
Yeah.
It sounds all like it's a ditty, and it's not. Everything is difficult to learn for no reason.
I've actually done that show 3 times now, and every single time I've learned it on a last-minute basis. Not the same role any of the 3 times, so I've learned 3 different roles in that opera, last minute, in a hurry, and every time I'm staring at the score going, why does this have to be hard?
Predictably, I started with Vanity and then I didn't touch it again for 15 years. What was the first opera you saw that you fell in love with?
I actually am very fuzzy on some of I mean, when I really fell in love with opera was around the time of my relapse. So my memories are actually pretty fuzzy from that time period. I'm not sure exactly what was when.
Right.
I do remember getting a whole bunch of operas on, VHS from the library and watching a lot of them. One of them was Hansel and Gretel. Traviata. That one was, I remember I watched a lot. I watched OM.
Which ones? Do you remember who was in them?
The Traviata was the Zeffirelli filmed version with Domingo and Stratas.
Right.
And then the Bohème was the Baz Luhrmann production.
Awesome, but for some reason it never occurred to me that a person's first Bohème could be anything other than a Zeffirelli Bohème.
It was what was available in the library and I knew nothing, so I wasn't going for, this is the classic version. Right. I was like, oh, here is a Bohème.
So my memory is terrible, notoriously terrible, but the first opera that I remember seeing, that I remember loving, was the Zeffirelli Bohème. I was in Vienna, and my mom took me to the Wiener Staatsoper. And the thing with the tickets at the Wiener Staatsoper is that the boxes really close to the stage have a limited view, like they're designed so you can't actually see the whole stage. Here's a hack: buy the cheapest, like 12 € seat in the very back of the box and stand on it. Then you will see everything. It's great. And it's more comfortable for shorties like me at 5'1" than the standing room seats, which are the same price. So that's what we did. What I remember very vividly was being sort of transfixed by Musetta, because in that production, she has the red velvet dress and the red wig, and I loved her. And I was then allowed to go and buy some Prosecco in the intermission. That is what I remember. I was like 11 at this point. So for a Canadian girl, this was real weird. But it was a very clear memory to me, and I remember enjoying it, but I don't remember like going, oh, this has changed my life. The fact that I remember it at all is probably important because I remember so little of my own life. And I remember the Act 3 set. I really liked the Act 3 set. But the Act 3 set is built so that one of the trees is on the stage and the other half of it is coming down from the ceiling. And I remember for some reason being really transfixed with the fact that the seams didn't line up completely. Yeah, that was the first opera that I remember seeing. And like, it must have done something. What was your first lead operatic role?
I did all my roles a little bit in stages, where after I did Sandman, it was, okay, I was a third spirit, and then I was, okay, now it's a named role, so I'm Barbarina. And then my first lead, though, even though it's arguably less music than Barbarina, was Lauretta in Gianni Schicchi. I was 20 years old, and that was also my first Puccini opera that I sang, actually. Standard, starter role.
The thing that sopranos start with.
Yep. I love Schicchi as a show. It's still one of my absolute favorites. It's so much fun. I love it musically. My voice was changing a lot. So some days things were comfortable to sing and some days they weren't, and I was never sure what was happening. So that was stressful, and I was also wearing a really, really heavy dress.
That dress, we had to wear the same dress. We were double cast. That dress was literally made out of couch.
Yeah, it was like upholstery weight fabric. I think it was double layered of it. So over the course of that first weekend, I think I dropped 10 pounds. It was hard work, and it was probably in June or something, so I was working up a sweat under that dress.
It was so hot.
Yeah.
I remember being backstage in that dress and like holding the gown up around my butt just so I could like air myself out because the gown was so heavy.
Fun story, that is the origin of Borb.
Yes.
Because he tells her to go out and feed the bird on the terrace, and then later she comes back in and says, Daddy, the bird doesn't want to eat anymore. And he says, well, then give it something to drink. And I was doing that production, and we had a bird, it was a Christmas tree ornament, a nice little bird with real feathers. And it occurred to me, probably I think midway through the production, you know what would be really funny is if the bird looks like she's just been feeding it the whole time, and looks like it really can't eat anymore. It's about to explode. So when our company did Schicchi 8 years later, I went, I'm gonna make that bird, and that became Orb, and now he is our mascot and my roommate.
He's more disturbing the longer you look at him.
He's not disturbing.
He's absolutely disturbing. The first lead role I ever did was Susanna in Nozze di Figaro.
You went the opposite approach from me.
Yeah. Susanna is notorious for being the role with the most individual notes in all of opera. And that was my first. I was 19 years old doing Susanna. Thankfully, I had like 8 months to prepare, which was really helpful at the time. It's the thing that sort of cultivated my love for recit. Without having had to like panic learn how to understand and deliver good recit over the course of 8 months, I would not love it the way that I do now. And like, I memorized it so fully that to this day, I'm pretty sure I could just stand up and deliver the first good 20 to 30 minutes of that opera. As early as it sounds to have young sopranos sing Susanna, I regret nothing. And if you think you are too young for it, but someone has faith that you can do it, you probably can. And you know what? You'll be a better singer when you come out the end of it. I certainly was. 8 months of studying Susanna made me understand Mozart in a level that I just didn't before that. Like, it's so fundamentally changed my understanding of what Recit was like. Highly recommend doing Susanna way before you think that you're emotionally ready for it.
What were the first shows you produced for Mariposa? For those who don't know, Jackie and I founded an indie opera company here in Vancouver called Opera Mariposa when we were 20-year-old emerging artists. We originally imagined it as a place that would create more opportunities for young artists in our teeny tiny little operatic community, but also a place that had a more accessible rehearsal schedule and space for Jackie. She has myalgic encephalomyelitis and has always had to skip lots of auditions just because the rehearsal schedule wasn't accessible to her due to her disability. Besides, it was a natural progression for us. We'd already been producing concerts for a while and had already amassed a fairly large costume stock to start us off. It made perfect sense for us to formalize and become a company. Now, around a decade on, Mariposa is lucky to be one of Canada's key indie players. We've expanded to include a theatre wing, developed into Canada's only 100% top-to-bottom disability-led and run opera company, and organized so many awesome events, panels, talks, productions, and concerts, I have literally lost count. Mariposa is our baby. We love it with our whole hearts, and even though we're not at the beginning of our careers anymore, we don't show any signs of slowing down anytime soon.
Not bad for an idea some girls had in the back of a band at midnight, All right, bragathon over, back to the silly games.
Well, we started with a concert first, so that was a concert.
I mean, we say that like we didn't do the most. We did the most.
Yeah, okay. We did all the diva arias, and we changed our gowns for every piece. We alternated pieces and changed each time, had full costumes.
At one point, you wore wings and point shoes, I think. Was that the same show?
No, that was
a different
not.
show.
That was a different one. We'll get to that later. It set the tone for what we were going to do with our company.
When people suggest that it was an excuse to sing more, I would counter that argument by saying that it was an excuse to wear more dresses.
We definitely did have one or two little 6-year-old girls in the audience who came away with the understanding that being an opera singer means you get to play dress up forever, and we basically just said, yeah, it does.
If that is what we're teaching children, I'm on board. I regret nothing. And then after that, our first opera was The Impresario. It's a 20-minute opera with 4 sung roles, one of which is like 2 lines, and then the title role is a spoken role.
We wanted to do it because it was a good place to start because it is a smaller production. It's not full chorus and set changes organizationally. It's a step up from concert, but not too big of a step. But also, we really liked the meta-ness of our first opera, being an opera about the difficulties of running a small opera company.
Yeah, that show was really super meta. And there were chicken noises. Our impresario was an excellent actor, and there's this big, long monologue that the impresario has to deliver right at the end. And it involves saying, I'm never gonna do this again. I'm running off to the country to raise chickens. And then in the middle of doing this, in rehearsal one day, our impresario just said, I'm gonna run off to the country to raise chickens. And we lost it.
We did not stop laughing for probably a solid 5 minutes. I just remember the director saying you broke the singers. That show was also the one that involved point shoes.
Right.
Because it's such a short show that we had to sort of pair it with something, and we decided to pair it with a concert. And I had just sung all of my rep for our launch concert, and I went, I don't think I should be repeating this for our next show. So what else do I have? And the one we ended up with, because it's cute, it's fun, was Doll Song from Les Contes of Hahn. And the thing is, she has done a lot of ballet. And so we said, I guess we need point shoes then. I'd never done anything like that before. I'm not a dancer, but it was really fun. It was really interesting. It's painful.
I bled through a pair once. They were entirely made of like hundreds of layers of papier-mâché, and by the end of one of my rehearsals, you could see blood on the outside layer. They suck.
You choreographed me.
Yeah.
Because you know it, and you gave me the crash course of how to, not break my ankles or anything. And the thing about Doll Song, if you're doing it on point, is you don't need to be on point for long. The movements aren't technical because she's not human. It just has to sort of be the shapes that look vaguely ballet-like. It really helped me develop the sense of movement, because as someone who doesn't come from acting and doesn't come from dance at all, that was always something I was nervous about on stage. That was one of the first things that I did that was challenging in that way that I really liked.
We need to do it again.
Oh yeah.
Our shows are so extra. They're just, what if we could hang this from the ceiling and then drop flower petals on everybody? What if we could have just an explosion of dresses show up at every point on the stage at once?
The answer to those is budget.
What are the first things you want to sing post-pandemic?
I have a whole handful that I've been looking at, I've been loving. I would love to do a Bohème. I'd love to do Mimi, but I also know that I need to sing Musetta. I would love to do a really fully staged, fully costumed production of Magic Flute. I would love to sing the Queen of the Night. I would love to go crazy with the makeup and the costume.
I literally have a vision of like a 20-foot veil that has to like be spread out behind you and held by people backstage. Like the night sky full of stars is coming out from your tiara so wide that someone on each end is holding it so we can see like constellations and stuff in it. That would be cool. Budget.
The other one that I'm very into at the moment is Turandot. I love the music of that show, and I would love to sing Liu. I've sung one of her arias, and I'm learning the other two. That's honestly most of what she sings. I just have a lot of feelings about Turandot in general as a show. I have a lot of things that I would like to see from a production of Turandot. I have a lot of ideas. We've discussed these before.
Lots.
I've ranted at you.
I have 2 words, and those words are Guopei.
Budget. We've also discussed a production of Cendrillon that we would love to do. And I would love to play Cendrillon, partly because it's just a good role. I've sung one of the arias, I really enjoy it. Partly, again, for the meta-ness of no one else is gonna fit in my shoes. The other one that I've been looking at recently that I am actually really enjoying, and I wasn't sure I would. I knew I'd enjoy it musically, I wasn't sure about how I'd feel with the character, but having watched it and listened to it for a while, I feel like I'm finding the way in, is Lucrezia Borgia. I got recommended a few roles to learn recently, and they involve Queen of the Night and Lucrezia Borgia, and my reaction was, I'm being told to learn all the murdery roles. Is there a vibe I give off or something?
Yes, just a tiny murder vibe, that's all.
Okay, tiny murder vibe. Okay, I can work with that.
For me, I had 2 shows on the go before, so I'd have to say those as well because I don't know when they're coming back and I don't know when it will be safe for us to do big cast shows when things come back, so I don't know when they'll happen. But one of them was Rosalinda and Die Fledermaus. We were in the middle of rehearsals for that. We were starting to stage it when the apocalypse happened. And I was also going to sing Thibaut in Don Carlo, which would have been my first Verdi role, aside from Anina, which doesn't count. Thibaut would also have been my first ever pants role, which is really cool because I've never had to learn to walk as though there's something else in my pants, and that's a skill I don't have. Yeah, that would have been really, really cool. As for roles like For Me, I'm pretty desperate to sing a Violetta. I feel like I understand that lady at a visceral level. I love her. And true love lasts a lifetime. And I know that it really sort of suits what my voice does right now. Same thing with Manon. Manon is like the terrible person version of Violetta. I find those women super fascinating. They're complicated in a way that some of my roles are not. Like, say what you want about Magic Flute. It's wonderful, great. Pamina is not the most complicated soprano that's ever been on stage. So I'd love to do those, sort of, theoretically. We also have a couple one-person operas that we'd like to do as well. Yeah. First thing that Mariposa is going to do, not telling. We don't know yet. So we can't tell you because there's nothing to tell. All right, that was fun, actually.
Yeah.
How did we not get any repeats?
Weird.
It's like we planned it, but we didn't. We just sat down and drank tea.
Yes, and then a weird amount of playing with Borb.
There was no weird amount of playing with Borb. There is always just enough playing with Borb. We love him. If you have a good opera first story, please do leave it down in the comments. I want to collect them. If you enjoyed this silly little game, like this video down below to let me know. Keep the comment section full of joy and light, and I will see you in my next video. And now we covered screen. Say hello to the camera, Borb. Best number 3. Please, for the love of God, get it frickin' right. He's our friend.
Before you got here, he was my roommate.
Find it that I... Was it 19? No,
19.
19.
I had a lot of fun. It was,
Play Sarah Brightman's In the Arms of an Angel. How do I finish my videos? I don't remember anymore.